Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Sandile Makasi, and I'm one of the co-hosts for this Faith in Action webinar series. We're so grateful tonight that we will be able to be with you. We're grateful for the panelists that are joining us, but also we're grateful for the last few weeks that we've had this webinar series. Yashika, how has it been for you?
It's been absolutely incredible. And I think what we are doing is actually touching the surface of so much of good that is happening in the countries around the globe and people in the faith communities. I think for me, it has been absolutely impactful in terms of the messaging, the journey towards addressing the Sustainable Development Goals through faith in action. And for me, that's so important. And I think that's why we've created this webinar series, because we're finding more and more the faith community's involvement in engaging interreligious dialogue, understanding, and the work that is being done. Not to say that there isn't problems, and we're obviously going to find out more about that a little later in the program today.
Yeah, thank you, Ashika. Thank you. It's been great to co-host this series with her. I must say for me, the most exciting thing has been to see the voice of the interfaith, involved in global matters and issues that affect every one of us. Grateful for the various insights we have received. So today, we have an exciting topic, and the topic of today is addressing interreligious tensions through literacy and enhancing understanding and harmony. Our panelists tonight are coming from a wide range of religions and also of backgrounds, and they will be sharing with us their insights as we delve into the subject of what we can do together to build bridges, but also to have interfaith harmony and social cohesion. So without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to welcome our panelists tonight. So I'll name them one by one, and then I'll invite each of them to tell us a little bit about themselves. So we'll start first with Michael Swain. Hello, Michael. It's good to have you on the call.
Be with you, Sandile. Thank you for this opportunity. Really looking forward to this discussion.
Thank you. Please share a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you. So I am very much involved in, obviously, the IF20. I'm one of the vice chairs. I have that privilege. And I also am the executive director of an organization called Freedom of Religion South Africa, otherwise known as 4SA, which has a focus on protecting and promoting and upholding our rights to religious freedom. And I believe that that is absolutely an integral and foundational and fundamental right that we need to uphold, we need to respect, we need to ensure that governments respect it too, because sadly, increasingly, sometimes they do not seem to be doing so. But in the process, I also believe that that religious freedom right, because it is applicable to all faiths and there is no distinction between one faith or another, it is not there to prop up any particular faith orthodoxy. It is a doctrinally neutral in that sense, right? It is actually an amazing building block to bring cohesion between the different faith groupings. And we can talk about that a little more as the discussion goes on.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much. Next up is Me Lorado Shepenhazen. Welcome. It's so good to have you.
I am a traditional healer, and I'm also an activist and a community leader. I am a founder of an NPO called Ngizweni, where we feed hungry people in informal settlements, and we also engage in different activities to help them with their development. I am also a One Consciousness trainer trained at ACAM in India. It is a spiritual institution that focuses on helping humanity transform their consciousness. I am also a founder of Kikarabo. Kikarabo is a healing institution where we facilitate workshops for communities and help them deal with their emotional state because it actually blocks their progress. And we also offer this facility to corporates as well. I was also one of the women that were chosen to be among the presidential, okay, I couldn't see, sorry. Can you hear me, Sandile?
Yes, yes, we can hear you very well. Thank you.
We can hear you very well. Welcome.
Yes. I was also chosen to be among women that were going to serve at the president's women working group during Thabo Mbeki's tenure. I also worked with his wife, who had created a South African Women in Dialogue organization. I became their peace commissioner and their development commissioner. So in my capacity as a leader then, I was asked to go to Botswana with other leaders from around Africa. They came from their local governments to go and have discussions about communities and their problems in Africa and compile a report that was going to be used by SADC when they came the following week. And then also as a peace commissioner, I was sent to Sudan to go and assist in monitoring the Sudanese referendum. And the last one is I was among the delegation that was chosen to go and be trained in Kenya at the International School of Peace and Security. Thank you.
Thank you so much, May. We're so grateful to have you. And next up is Mama Mo Alima Fakude. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Please unmute yourself. Thank you.
Should we perhaps speak to Dr. Shamaine in January and maybe come back to me?
Yes, let's do that. Yeah, it looks like she's not
Welcome,
connected
Dr.
to the
Shamaine in January.
audio.
Welcome to the program. Maybe you can start off by sharing a little bit about yourself and the work that you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation to participate and with this esteemed panel on such an auspicious occasion. I really value and appreciate this opportunity very much. I'm working in the university higher education context. My specialization is in the area of the transformation of higher education, and the topic of social cohesion then becomes very pertinent to what I do on a daily basis. I'm also a member of the Baha'i Faith and serve on the Baha'i Office of Public Affairs. And in that regard, I'm representing that office today. And in addition to that, I also serve on some of the Baha'i local governing bodies and at some point in the regional bodies as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's wonderful. I'm so glad we have a diverse team tonight, Sandile. We've been seeing the various voices throughout the week that has joined us. And it's amazing to find women actually in the field of dialogue. And I think sometimes it's this wonderful energy that women have that we're able to, broker some of the difficult conditions when conflict arises. So I'm happy that we've seen this wonderful panel. And is Moa Alima, is she still available to maybe share a little bit about herself?
I'm
Welcome.
here. Am I unmuted now? I hope so.
Yes. Welcome.
Good afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are. Mu'alima Amina Fakude is an activist scholar with a strong background in the preservation and discharging of human rights and living rights to the entire ecosystem universally. Due to this drive, I operate largely in interfaith, striving to provide education and leadership while simultaneously receiving the same from my counterparts and all those whose lives intersect with mine. These activities catapult me into independent research in issues of grave global injustice, presently climate policy, I hope you would agree, energy justice and poverty, as well as food sovereignty, food systems, food security, and food insecurity among the marginalized. In simple terms, I'm a cheerleader for justice, goodness, goodwill, and peace. I participate in a lot of fora initiatives that deal with these challenges in life. And I'm a member of a lot of things, for instance, interfaith, peace, internationally, justice, mediations, arbitrations. I participate in all that internationally. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Well, yeah, I don't know what to say. I'm quite touched by having such great leaders, but also people that are making a great difference in the world. As I said earlier, our topic tonight is addressing interreligious tensions and conflict. It's not something you hear about a lot, but it's something that requires a lot of our attention, whether there is tension or not, or no tension, and it requires our utmost wisdom as well as compassion to deal with it. So, what I would love to know is, when it comes to this topic, what would you say are the primary causes of religious tension or conflict? And we'll first invite Mama Melorado to please take that one. Thank you.
These conflicts are created by intolerance, misunderstanding, and also just not having any respect for other people's religions. Religious conflicts have been created by people who wanted power over other people, economic power, land issues are the main problems that have created such chaos. The sad part of it is that, this conflict is deeply rooted, and it has been happening right through our history. Now, there are people that were persecuted simply because of their beliefs. Most of them Muslims, Hindus, African religions are also attacked. It is so sad what has been happening. Now, this dialogue is of utmost importance because it is going to be addressing the pain and the conflicts that we have around religious intolerance.
Thank you so much. That was so insightful, Mamlarato. So maybe the same question to Michael. What is it about, and what actually causes, or the primary causes of religious tension and conflict that we see in the world today?
I sincerely believe that one of the biggest challenges is the fact that we know so little about the other's religion. And it is that ignorance, and of course, ignorance unfortunately is not a good thing, because if you don't understand something, very often you fear something. And if you fear something that you don't understand, then very often you actually end up in a kind of with a conflicted view of that particular religion or faith or idea or whatever it may be. It can even be an ideology. And I think one of the other challenges is, of course, is that there is very little relational connection between the leaders of different faith groupings, even in a society where you live side by side. I mean, South Africa is a very diverse society, and we are very faith diverse. And my work in the religious freedom space, of course, is very interesting from that point of view, because freedom of religion is a neutral right. It applies equally to all faiths and all beliefs and all interpretations of faith. The only proviso to religious freedom, of course, is that you do no harm to the other. But what I have found is that, of course, when you're dealing with different faiths, how little interactivity there actually is between the different faiths and the different faith leaders. They often don't even know of each other's existence, and I mean that literally. So I think that, of course, the ignorance, the lack of relationship, that is actually an unfortunate recipe for the potential for interreligious conflict. But I think the cure is also, in a sense, framed up in that very context, because obviously, if we can reverse that, if we can actually understand better one another's beliefs and what we believe and why, and we can actually begin to relate as human beings to one another, because religion is an integral part of your human dignity. And it is not something that you just sort of check in at the door when you go to work. It goes with you. It's your worldview. It's what flavors your life, in a sense. It's the lens through which you see life. And of course, if we then relate to each other in our humanity, then I believe that we will find one another. And in so doing, we can actually help to diffuse some of these conflict situations that have arisen.
I think it's so important that you mention that, because we don't seem to know each other well, and out of fear we react to things because of that space of doubt. And when we actually engage in dialogue, or there's some level of understanding, that also brings in a certain level of respect for the other. Dr. Charmaine January, you've been involved in the academic arena for a long time, and also you come from the community. So, what is it that you feel is the cause of some of these religious tensions that we see today?
Thank you so much. In my observation, I've experienced, as other colleagues have mentioned, that this kind of prejudice that seems to arise between people of different faiths, its root cause is indeed ignorance. And we've already started to delve into what kind of ignorance or illiteracy arises. And I think it's not an uncommon phenomenon. I think that kind of isms, it exists between people from different backgrounds in general. So you have all sorts of prejudices arise. Unfortunately, religious prejudice is actually quite sad, in the sense that religion itself, fundamentally, it's about harmony. And what I have found or observed, that when people emphasize the secondary aspects of religion, that links perhaps to other dimensions of human existence, that is contextualized or is in a historical context, then if those become overemphasized at the expense of the unity, the harmony, the love, which is the fundamental essence and purpose, then I'm sad to say that I think the purpose of religion is very much misunderstood. And it goes even so far as to say that if one uses one's religion, in other words, weaponize it, to gain advantage from a land, economic power, any form of advantage, again, in my view, it's not the intended purpose of religion. And I'll go so far as to say it's almost a corruption of religious intent and the very existence of religion. So that has been my observation, and I feel that I echo the sentiments that this question is so fundamental to our existence, and it is unfortunately so deep-rooted over many generations and maybe even since the beginning of time, that these platforms created now gives us this wonderful but very vital opportunity to promote that unity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that's very nicely answered as well. Mualima, from your perspective, you've seen so much of change in the world today. We've also come from the difficult experience of apartheid as a country in South Africa, but yet religious communities stood together to fight this big evil that permeated our lives. But today we still see the deepening of conflict, the deepening of the fear, and the resistance to engage in dialogue. What is your take on what is happening with regard to religious tensions globally? You can unmute.
Sorry about that. I agree with all the speakers that came before me. The reasons they give are true. But I'm not going to touch on them anymore. I'm just going to briefly say it is misunderstanding, indeed, and failure of communication among human beings. Religion creates barriers among people that sort of make them believe they are different. Hence, you find them having conflict among themselves. Had we been obedient to the Almighty Creator, who gave us all the scriptures, which fundamentally say one and the same thing, we would not have conflict. But because religion is man-made, it comes with all these problems. And the way it comes with all the problems indicates that it is a sin to practice religion rather than to practice the law of the Almighty. For instance, in the Quran, which is a book that Muslims live by, it says in Surah Al-Ankabut, ayat 46, it says, and do not argue with the people of the scriptures. The people of the scriptures are all those people who believe. Do not argue with them except in a way that is best, except for those who commit injustice among them. Say, we believe in that which has been revealed to us and revealed to you, and our God and your God is one, and we are believers in submission to the Almighty. So this is all embracing, and it demonstrates that if one questions the next person's religion, you have to question it only for reasons of goodness and only for reasons of understanding between yourselves as one. One creator, one humanity, or one creator, one creation. So we are all the creation of the Almighty. In another ayat, which is Az-Zumar, ayat 7, it says, if you believe, indeed, the Almighty is free from need of you. If you disbelieve, the Almighty is free from need of you. And he does not approve for his servants' disbelief. And if you are grateful, he approves it for you. And no bearer of burdens will bear the burden of another. Then to your Lord is your return, and he will inform you about what you used to do. Indeed, he is all-knowing, which means we need to educate the adherents in our religions to follow the scripture, not to They may follow our liturgy if it leads to goodness, but if it doesn't lead to goodness, if it misguides, each person has to question that which does not go according to the character of the Almighty. And lastly, in another ayat, it says, the Almighty does not forbid you from those who do not fight you because of religion, and do not expel you from your homes, from being righteous towards them, which means embrace all human beings, unless they fight you. And acting justly towards them, which means treat them as you would like yourself to be treated. Indeed, the Almighty loves those who act justly, and only that is justice. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. You know, as I was preparing for this webinar, I had such a very interesting conversation with Mayor Lorato about, and you mentioned a little bit when you were speaking about misinformation and ignorance, and the role that it plays in fueling tensions and fear. So I'd love to hear from your perspective, especially as you share your own personal story, Mayor Lorato, to say, how does misinformation and as well as misinformation and ignorance affect or fuel tensions, conflict, and also hostility between groups?
Yes. Thank you for that question. You know, I think the African religion, when it comes to a calling for one to become a traditional healer, a Sangoma, creates the worst problems because people misunderstand it. When Christianity came into our countries, they demonized our African practices and religions. They told people that we are possessed by demons, we are heathens and primitive. When a lot of people started joining Christianity, it created conflict among families in the same house, in communities. And it really spread where you are even embarrassed to tell people that you are a traditional healer, and you also have a calling. Now, when you are initiated as a traditional healer, during those processes, you need your family here. And that family, most of them will not be there because of shame. What I find sad is that it is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful religion that is so, so misunderstood. It is deep. It helps you to connect with yourself, the rituals and the practices, to really find out who you are and what you are about. And the practices of this religion are actually so sacred because through their ceremonies where people are invited, it talks of peace, it talks of respect, and it really it goes deep within yourself, because when you are sitting there and you are performing these ceremonies, the way you conduct yourself, impacts your body. It can only ooze sacredness, respect, and peace. I think that's the story. I have said enough. Okay.
Thank you so much for thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, it's quite this is, you know, as you were talking, I just realized that this is not just about people you see in the community. This also is within the family, your own family. So it's really a big deal. Dr. Charmaine, I'd love to hear your perspectives on this matter about how ignorance and misunderstandings can impact or fuel tensions and hostilities between groups.
Thank you, Sandile. One of the teachings of the Baha'i faith is that each individual has the responsibility to investigate truth. And that is actually a big responsibility. The belief is that at the age of spiritual maturity, at around the age of 15, that a human being would have developed the emotional, the mental, the intellectual, and the spiritual capacities to understand right from wrong, or truth from falsehood. So within that context, one understands the human being in the context of nobility. A human being has this capacity to know and to worship God. So the question of ignorance then falls to why would a mature human being of sound mind and capability to act responsibly as a citizen of the world resort to prejudice, let's just say even violence, in order to assert a particular viewpoint. And so that begs the question, has the environment in which that human being been educated truly resulted in an educated person? So we have to question our educational systems. Has the individual had engagement with people that are different to them, not on the basis of fear and suspicion, but on the basis of meaningful engagement, where that nobility is shared around something that they would all aspire towards? The nobility of the human being aspires to harmony, to unity, and to seek the welfare of the whole. A human being, in its spiritual nature, strives to be of service and to be a contributor to the betterment of mankind. It is in that spiritual framework that a human being finds their highest aspiration, but also their joy and their happiness in this life. So if a human being is steeped in ignorance of that true nature and has not been given a proper education that deals with both their spiritual and their material dimension, that human being is deprived of their full potential. And therefore, spaces that we are speaking about and the ones that we are calling on our governments, our educational systems, our communities, and the ones that we in this group would like to lead in some, at least in this position or in this context, at the level of thought leadership, would be to point to the urgency of us having this kind of religious literacy at all levels. So I think in that way, we will surely dispel ignorance, and we will surely present the information of the true purpose of religion and the true nature of man or of humankind. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was really beautifully put, in the sense that religious literacy plays a pivotal role in our lives today. Without that, we seem to be getting confused in terminologies, misunderstanding, and it can lead to a huge level of hate of the other, which is completely against the essence of what faith is meant to be. And we heard beautiful quotations from Mualima earlier on. We've also heard from Mam Lerato, yourself as well as Michael. So, Michael, given the fact that religion is meant to develop the goodness in humanity, to bring out the best in all of us, yet today we have so much of conflict based on religion. Perhaps from your perspective, can you share some examples of why this has led to so much of strife and tension?
I think it's self-evident, unfortunately, in the world that there is interreligious conflict. You just have to, switch on the YouTube or pick up just about any news channel, and you'll see cases of it, hideous cases of it. I mean, persecutions that almost defy the imagination. It's just so horrific. But I think one of the things that I've always tried to do is to step back and look at maybe how can we find one another rather than how can we just identify and stay in that space where there is conflict and we know there's conflict. How do we get out of this? How do we find a way forward? And it's interesting, the faith background that I have, and I spend most of my life, as I say, defending all faiths, because religious freedom is a foundational right that belongs equally to all faiths. But the Christian faith is one of the principal tenets of it is love your neighbor as yourself. That's the golden rule. That is the equivalent in the African context would probably be Ubuntu. And I think that its challenges, of course, when it comes to religious conflicts, is that very often you have an ideology, and it doesn't really matter whether it's a faithy ideology, it could be a secular ideology, where the state actually puts its power behind a belief or a particular group or a particular understanding in order to gain an outcome. And that's, of course, a very dangerous thing because freedom of religion is, as I said, something that applies equally to all faiths. And therefore, it's important that we respect one another's faiths. And I do think that, as we said at the beginning, that understanding one another's faiths is a very positive thing. And where I've seen perhaps the most powerful meetings of in a reconciliational sense is actually when we've been dealing with issues where religious freedom has been at stake. Because there are issues where all faiths, no matter what faith you may have, you will find that you have a common cause when perhaps there's a common threat. So for example, and just as a for instance, during the lockdown, the COVID lockdowns, we represented in court when we challenged the lockdown regulations, which said that you could not pray two people together, but you could visit a gym or a casino. That affected equally all faiths because all faiths were effectively being deprived of one of the fundamental rights of your faith, which is, of course, to assemble together, to practice together, to experience your faith together. And it was interesting that in that context and in other contexts that I can mention as well, we have found faith leaders from disparate faiths, people who probably wouldn't know anything about one another, may even be potentially hostile to one another, coming together under the common rubric of religious freedom. In other words, they found a common cause. And within that context, of course, the first thing that you do is you discover human. We're actually real people. We can sit around a table, we can eat together, we can talk together, we can even discuss some difficult issues together, and in the process we can gain better understandings of one another. So I truly believe that what we need to be seeking isn't just so much to identify the very serious challenges, and obviously there may be interventions that are needed when that happens, because that's when it's really tipped over the edge, so to speak. But I think in the process, we need to really work on ways that we can find one another, bridges, and understand that faith is a common right to all people. God doesn't force you to believe anything. He gives you the power, the capacity, the freedom of choice to choose what you believe and why you believe it. And I think that if that is the case, then we should certainly be very careful before we start imposing our beliefs and our faiths on anybody else other than what we may believe ourselves.
100%. So we need to be very careful before we impose our beliefs on anyone else. And we've seen the tragedy of imposition, as cited today in different examples. Mualima, what would you say are some of the sacred texts or some of the teachings from your faith tradition that promotes peace, mutual respect, and understanding towards other religions? Maybe share an example or two.
Okay, thank you. From my religion, examples of respecting other people's faiths exist in what I've already quoted before. In coexisting with other religions and with other human beings, even if they know no religion, the standard is the way they live in obedience to the character of human beings as they are created to be representatives of the Almighty. In Surah Al-Baqarah, which is our first surah in the Quran, it says, the Almighty said, I'm about to create on earth my vicegerent. So, simply defined, a vicegerent is a representative, is one like the other. If we are the vicegerents of the Almighty, it wasn't me that he was meaning. It was all human beings, which means as he has no form, it means every human being's character is like that of the Almighty. So in order to ensure that there's no conflict among us, we have to pray every day to adopt that character. The only thing that we're going to stand up against is what is contrary to that character. That way, whether a person has a religion or hasn't got a religion, if their ways, if their character, if their values according to the values of the Almighty, those people are acceptable and they need our tolerance. In fact, proselytizing and changing other people's religion to your own is cruel. Like Melirato spoke about African religion, that people denigrate it to the extent families disintegrate and end up being ashamed of their own family people, of their own next of kin. That is terrible. That is not what a human being should do to other human beings. Because there is no better religion, there is no worse religion. The Almighty gave us the soul and made us all human, and He created all of us. He did not create religion for us. He created faith in Himself, and that faith is demonstrated through obedience. So that's how we can stop conflict, by educating. But our major glitch between ourselves and educating all humanity is money. Money is the lifeblood of all existence. So it doesn't matter how hard you work to reach everyone and enlighten them and let them enlighten you as to why they are where they are. You can't reach them because moving from point A to point B means you have to have money. Hence, there are people who are marginalized because everybody else is scared to overstretch themselves to the extent where they have nothing, because even going to people is money. So if we were to influence our state, our South Africa, as a constitutional democracy, we would say to them, the citizenry are the first people to educate. Communities are the first people to educate. And we don't have to educate them. Talk to them. They will educate you because they are educated. The only thing, what they know is suppressed. Because when we appear before them, we are wearing our graduation caps and gowns, speaking of our qualifications, and they don't have all that. So we ourselves, being faith leaders, we create classism among people because we come from this position. Most of the time when I introduce myself, except for today, I wonder why not. I usually say, I'm Alima Amina Fakude, I'm a human being and I'm a person. Good morning, thank you. Because all these accolades actually devastates those who haven't got any to present. Thank you.
That's very humbling indeed. Thank you so much. You made several important points, and I think it resonates with everyone in the panel tonight. But I think there are some key questions that people are asking while they're watching the program. The issue around the principles that our religions have, and if they're all noble, and if they all speak to truth, and if they all speak to mutual respect and harmony, yet that human element creates this opposition. It builds ego, it builds power, and that in itself can destroy a person, it can destroy families, and eventually it can destroy the world. So taking South African context of freedom of religion in South Africa, our beautiful constitution that enshrines the noble values. Mam Lerato, do you think that the values are actually translating in our everyday life? Or do you think there's still a problem in terms of people understanding one another?
There's still a big problem in terms of people understanding one another. Yashika, what saddens me is that traditional healers go to churches. They belong to certain churches. When there is a funeral, they will go there. And in this funeral and in these other churches, including Christian churches, when you go there, they are not ashamed to talk bad about traditional healers from the pulpit. It still happens. So where are we at? When as a traditional healer, I come to your church because I love the way you pray. I love the way you sing. It is beautiful. And I go to a funeral to go and show my respects and support you. And inside your sermon, you stand up and talk bad about traditional healers. How does it make me feel inside? So where and funerals are big, churches are big. So where are these values that you're talking about? They are non-existent. We still have very, very serious problems. Within our own families, we are called witches. Anything happens, you get accused. It is bad. And families have also broken up because of those accusations and this big conflict of one being a heathen and the other one being holier than thou. So where we still have a big problem, we have a lot of work to do in our communities to really and truly talk about these issues, educate. We as traditional healers must be given an opportunity to stand up and actually explain to people what our profession is about, because it is a beautiful, beautiful profession that is misunderstood. So we are still having those problems, and we are trying to pave our way to be better understood by communities. I think we are the worst hit when it comes to other religions, Sangomas.
I understand and empathize because we work with a range of religious traditions in South Africa. And I think because indigenous knowledge systems have often come from oral tradition, the power remained with those who were able to literally, create literary models of religion, which then put indigenous knowledge systems in the back foot. And that has become a huge problem in terms of the way people perceive one another. We need to take the power back as original traditions instead of indigenous traditions. I've often said we are original, and put people back in their spaces of respect, in their spaces of understanding, because too often those who hold the power, whether today it's the phone, because social media has become the new teacher today, always put indigenous knowledge systems in the back foot. Do you think, Dr. Charmaine, then that the nature of literary understanding should actually move beyond, it should include the media, it should include various levels of education, not just keep it in the academic space? How do you view that? And are there examples, for example, in the Baha'i community, where people are able to actually work towards, work with other religions to achieve a common goal?
Thank you so much for that question. Yes, the Baha'i community at a global level through the Baha'i International Community participate in forums that promotes interfaith dialogue, and very similar to what we are doing this evening, helps to shape public thinking around how the vital role that religion can play in bringing people together. In fact, Baha'u'llah, who's the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith, has affirmed that the purpose of faith is to safeguard the interests and promote the unity of the human race. So at all levels of civilization, be it in the family, the workplace, the neighborhood, the city, the country, and in the world, wherever Baha'is find themselves in public arenas where they can safeguard the interest and promote the unity of the human race, they will put such proposals forward, as I hope to do this evening. So I think the ignorance does really stem from the fact that we live in a society where a culture of contest is the norm, where competitiveness is trumps collaboration. And the way, even in an academic sphere, how we are being assessed for performance is on an individual basis, how individual institutions are assessed, how the market assesses performance of businesses, for example. And all of this leads, this culture of contestation is what shapes the thinking through the media, through the educational system. We are preparing people for the world of work in very particular ways, where it's the survival of the fittest. So that law of the jungle, unfortunately, it doesn't really befit this stage of our evolution, I would believe, or I'd like to say, where we can really begin to see the other, not as out of a fear-based approach, but we can begin to see each other as different, but bringing wealth, knowledge, understanding of the world of being that we live in, of our traditional backgrounds, our religious backgrounds, in traditional knowledge systems, indigenous knowledge systems, that we might not have benefited from before, when the mainstream was a predominantly Western point of view. So as we see the other and embrace the wealth, the knowledge, the tradition that others bring to the table, as a humanity, we should actually be, we should see ourselves as benefiting from such an environment. So I do believe that the world view, the media, the mainstream, the educational ways in which we posit, should not put human beings forward as materialistic objects that are, going to serve a market or a particular political end, but rather in the preservation of the nobility and the oneness of mankind, really, in the work we're doing this evening, posit that human beings are actually spiritual in nature. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As I'm listening, I realize we have an enormous task on our hands, that each of us, people of faith and of faith or belief, have the responsibility to change and to transform the situation. I want to, ask the next question to Michael, because I know Michael works along, in the space of freedom of religion, but also in terms of interfaith. He works with many people that are in the interfaith space. So Michael, As you've been going around and speaking with people of faith over the years, what have you found have been the successful initiatives or programs that have helped to address religious tensions or conflict, whether in South Africa or globally?
Thank you, Sandile. I think perhaps there are some very good examples of the way that the faith communities have worked together and continue to work together. I think one of the big challenges is that we also live in an increasingly secular world where the general opinions and views and values of faith communities are actually increasingly pushed to one side. And that is a very concerning thing because obviously every faith has got a wealth of generations, centuries, sometimes millennia of wisdom, of principles. And it is actually upon those very principles that the civilizations that we live in are actually largely based, because they are based upon people's worldviews and people's understandings. And that then plays out in the societies. But we've seen, obviously, and certainly in the last sort of generation, a rise of secularism. And secularism tends to marginalize faith and faith views and faith values. And so what we found has been very interesting is, and I'll give you just maybe one for instance. So in this country, we recently had a major piece of legislation passed, which was called the Prevention and the Combating of Hate Crimes and Hate Speech. And that was a very concerning piece of legislation because for the first time in South Africa, it actually criminalized what you might say, what you might express, with a potential for 5 years in jail for a first offense. That's pretty serious. And the challenge, of course, among others, was that the word hate or hatred or hateful was not even defined in that piece of legislation. And so therefore, how do you even know whether you're actually saying something or doing something that actually is a crime if that particular critical tenet is not defined? And then the categories of people who could actually bring criminal charges or certainly lay criminal complaints were so broad and so vague that actually just about anybody could bring a charge against anyone for simply saying something that was effectively offensive, because the barrier was that you said something that caused somebody else substantial emotional harm. What is that? If that's offense, I mean, everybody gets offended at some point or another. But should you be able to potentially have somebody put in jail for 5 years simply because they said something that you found to be offensive? And so what we found in that debate, and it's a robust debate, obviously, that took place, and we do understand that there is unacceptable speech, like racist speech, for example, using certain words have got a meaning that is just beyond simply the word itself. But there was no protection put in, and we fought for this. There was no protection put into that particular piece of legislation for legitimate expression of faith. And there it is, unfortunately, some things which you can legitimately say as an expression of your sincerely held belief that actually could be very offensive to somebody who would actually have that opportunity. And therefore, that piece of legislation could be weaponized to actually go after you as a person of faith. And we're talking about all faiths here, because many faiths have the same tenets that perhaps are conflicted with secular values in some instances. And so what we found then was that the faith communities actually came together in a wonderful way. And in so doing, and we're talking about the United Ulama Council of South Africa, for example, who represents the vast majority of the Islamic faith, the Nkululeko Izizwe Association that represents many of the African traditional spirituality faiths, and obviously the Christian faith as well. And in that process, of course, we all found that we, first of all, got a better understanding of one another's belief systems and why we believe what we do and why it's so important. But also we had that common cause that we all want to be able to continue to express and to live out our faith as we see fit without fear of sanction. And so that was a very, I felt, critical and a real learning curve for, I think, all of us who've been involved in that process. And that particular, let's say, alliance or coalition, as we call it, is actually sustaining. And therefore, you have people who are now at the senior level of leadership working closely together on things that are of importance to all faiths and finding one another in the process. And I trust and believe that that is a tremendous peace-building opportunity as well that's baked into that particular thing. So around the rubric of our commonly shared, commonly enjoyed right to religious freedom, we can actually find understanding and we can find harmony, and hopefully we can actually prevent perhaps bad laws that will impact negatively all our faiths from being passed, or to correct that imbalance if it comes about. So I'm very encouraged by what I see in our wonderful, diverse society of South Africa as the opportunity for faiths to come together in a meaningful and very productive way.
Thank you, Michael. Earlier, I really appreciate what you've said. Earlier, you talked about Ubuntu and the golden rule. And what you just said really expresses so well that, we need each other. And as we work together as one family, rather, we can really build bridges. We can respect each other, and there could be a situation where we can actually work together to make a better world. I'm interested to hear the perspectives of Mama Mualima, because you're in the interfaith space. What have you found, are initiatives that are making a difference in the spaces that you operate in terms of uniting, increasing understanding and mutual respect among the faith groups?
I have found that people, before they recognize that they belong to a particular faith that differs from the other, are simply human to one another. Up until the time when they know that this one practices this religion and the other one practices this religion, then the barriers develop and attitudes change. And like I said, money is the poison in the whole thing. The truth is known to all faith leaders, and they know what the Almighty wants of us all. But for fear of losing their adherence into other religions or into other faiths, then they keep them knowing things in a certain way that is combative to the rest of the others. As a result, those barriers cause conflict among people who are otherwise peaceful with one another, to the extent people are scared to discuss issues of faith, to even question practices in faith, because immediately a person questions, they appear to be attacking. I remember how I came into interfaith. I didn't really mean to. I had not even thought about it. But what happened was NICSA, the organization that I lead now, needed someone from Islam to come into NICSA. And what happened was, who had come before me left NICSA because the chairperson of NICSA at the time was telling the Muslims, the Hindus, the African indigenous religion that they are fallen angels. And when I went, I also came across that, came up against it, and he was saying it in a hall full of interfaith people. And when he said it, standing in front of everyone, I just couldn't hold my horses. I went to the front immediately and stood next to him and said to others, "Peace be upon you." And they said, "Peace be upon you too." I said, "But I've lost mine." The words that have come out of our chairperson are hurting, and I can't keep quiet. So it came like that I ended up in interfaith. And from then on, praise to the Almighty, it's been 10 years. It did not happen. People drew close to one another. And if they criticize one another, they don't do that from the podium. Maybe they do it wherever they are. But we all grew to understand that every religion proceeds from the same Almighty Creator because He allowed it to exist. So to answer you, I would say it is not the people, it is the leaders. And unfortunately, lately, like my other colleague Michael was saying, religion or faith is becoming secularized. We follow politicians. You are measured according to how many pictures do you have with how many ministers. And when ministers come to us, we have lost our yardstick as faith leaders. We don't realize that we are the ones who have to provide moral compass if you are in a country for your whole country, if you are in a region for your whole region. In fact, we are to provide moral compass for the entire humanity, including the president. But when the president comes, even if we know a scandal about him, we aren't going to mention it, and we aren't going to even show that there's something we detest about him. Instead, we'll treat him like a celebrity. This is what is wrong. Faith leadership needs to step up and take the lead. Humanity is waiting until faith leadership takes the rightful place and occupy the position of the moral compass, unashamedly calling out everything that is ungodly. Then we are not going to have a world that is in the right space. I hope I answered you. If not,
That was
please let me know.
beautifully put. I think what you just said is that faith leaders need to step up. They need to become far more critical advocateers, if one has to use that word, and not just cite what is present in terms of the country and the laws, but they need to move beyond that to say, we as faith leaders find there is injustice in these areas. We as faith leaders want to work together because we can, and we recognize the human values that exist in faith traditions that is common in all our traditions, and we now want to take these next steps. So in conclusion for today's seminar, and I really want to thank each and every one of you for such wonderful insights that you've shared, and maybe some parting words from the guests tonight. Dr. Charmaine, from your perspective, listening to the sentiments that everyone has expressed, the pain that people have expressed when there's been disharmony and discord within the faith communities. How then do we take the next step? How then do we come together? We have a great constitution that is allowing the opportunity of engagement. Are we using it enough? And what are the next steps that we can do as faith communities to address these tensions?
Thank you so much. I think that really the fact that the Interfaith Forum 20 exists is, for me, a clear indication of the evolution of the G20, where it had started mostly looking at economic and perhaps political dimensions of life. It does, as a result of engagement of those prior to myself over many decades, I would imagine, there's now a general understanding that we cannot speak about the cohesion and the advancement of humanity without bringing in the faith perspective. And I think that it would be incumbent on us at the end of this to put forward, and I believe there's going to be a blog opportunity, to put forward statements, very compelling statements that would influence the ways in which governmental, political systems, economic systems will be shaped around looking at the well-being of each individual human being across the globe, in making determinations around policy, around the use of resources, around the distribution of wealth, and for us to make the clear statement that the past, which is maybe characterized by generations of conflict, does not need to determine the future, and that we do need to recognize and revise our understanding of what power is. That power is not power over, but rather together we can collaborate and have the power of unity to bring about a different world. None of us have lived in a just world before, but all of us are charged with creating that world. And so with my co-panelist, I think the sentiments I'm hearing is that that voice needs to come across from ourselves to start off with, to take the lead, to say that the future does not need to be characterized by the past, but that we can create new forms of power and work towards the power of unity and the power of collaboration. Thank you.
It's beautifully said. Work with the power of unity and collaboration. Mam Lerato, in parting, what are your thoughts around interfaith harmony and interfaith collaboration?
We need to take the discussions that we have to the marginalized communities. I am now referring to the people in informal settlements who are so marginalized. We need to treat those people also as a special case. I work there. One of the days at our center, I am going to be talking to them about what we were discussing today, just to give them an encouragement. But it needs to continue, that we make a concerted effort to gather them, have meetings with them. Let's have these dialogues with them so that they start realizing that something is being done to address issues, including our interfaith issues. There are many pockets of churches in these informal settlements. And sometimes I do organize these churches to get together and pray together. And it is so beautiful when those people are together, because they're going to sing and pray together and eat together. When they go back home, they are so happy. But we also know that they are hurting very badly because of their experiences, where they come from. It is a community of farm laborers who lost their homes when they were evicted, and they started occupying these spaces illegally. Now, there must be focus on those people with everything that we need. And we know that we need it to better our lives, to be better people, must be taken to those people and see how to empower them. And I've spoken to you about this, Yashika. People are hurting very badly. And without healing programs, it is going to be very, very difficult for these people to realize their fullest potential. They need healing. The healing that they need is a healing that is going to assist them to understand that they are worth it. And most of all, what I like about those healings, when you clear the trauma, their bond with God become a lot of potential to be unleashed in those communities. So that is how I see it.
Thank you so much. Those were absolutely pertinent points, that the hurt is still there. But more than that, I think it's the opportunity of faith that needs the space of engagement. We need to support the faith-based organizations. We need to support interfaith activity, as Alima just pointed out a little earlier. So perhaps then, Michael, listening to everyone and listening to the deep insights tonight, do you think that there's concrete evidence now that faith communities can actually work together, but they would need this opportunity and support? What are your final thoughts?
Well, absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, we have to understand that the fundamental right that actually underpins and protects and upholds our rights, our abilities, our capacities to live out, to express our faith, and to work together as faith communities is our right to religious freedom. And one of the biggest challenges we're seeing, and we've spoken about secularism, for example, is that there is a trend, and it's a trend that is very much in Africa at the moment, for states to seek to get themselves the power to control and to regulate the religious space. So we're seeing it in Ethiopia, we're seeing it in Kenya, we're seeing it in Uganda and Namibia, and we're seeing it here in South Africa. And of course, one of the most critical things that faith communities do of all types is that they have that moral voice. They can speak truth to power. They can actually put out a narrative that is maybe in conflict with the narrative that the authorities would want to put out, but to do so obviously in a constructive way. Now, if you can imagine that if the state and the CRL Rights Commission is actively working on this at the moment, they're pushing very hard for legislation so that every religious practitioner, every religious organization would be vetted and accredited and licensed. And without that, no doubt you would not be able to continue. That is an existential threat to religious freedom, because if the state can control you, it's no longer a right, it's a privilege, and it can be taken away from you. And so we have to be very alert and aware that this is a trend that is happening, and it's happening throughout sub-Saharan Africa particularly. And it's something that we need to be aware of, because we have to be able to preserve our rights as faith communities in all our diversity, to be that incredible power that we are, to be the glue for society, to bring society together, to uplift the disadvantaged, to intervene in situations where we see a loss and hurt and pain, but also to be able to speak truth to power and to bring that positive influence to government so that they do understand the value that the faith communities bring. And if we lose that, and we are in danger of losing it, if the state can manage to control the religious sector, then we really have no longer a meaningful right to religious freedom. And that's why we have to be very alert and aware of what's happening in our country today, and to be ready to push back and say, no, we are the faith communities of this country, and we make an incredible contribution, and we need to be allowed to live out our faith, to practice it, to speak it, to express it, to believe it as we see fit, obviously without breaking the law. And I think that's the most important thing that we can stand up for at this time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. You know, as it was so, as I'm sitting here just thinking, reflecting on what has been said today, it is very clear to me, two things are clear. Number one, we need each other. We definitely need each other. Regardless of what faith group or tradition that we have, we need each other. And we need each other not just for religious freedom, but we also need each other so that we can make this world a better place. From each of our faith traditions, there are wonderful teachings that inspire us to spread goodness, love, but also to bless our brothers and sisters who are next to us. The second thing for me that I think is that I'm getting from this conversation we've been having with such a great panelists who've been so wise, who've shared with us not only inspiring words, but also sobering words. For me, the second one is that we need to be the change we wish to see in the world, each of us. It takes one person. And I want to share with you something I learned. We did an interfaith conference some time ago, and an imam came forward, and he said, and we were asking, what have you learned? You know, what are some of the things that stood out to you? And he said, well, today I've learned that I need to be better. So everyone was interested to know what he meant. And he said, well, normally when he's walking on the street and he sees someone, maybe a pastor or someone from another faith, he would actually change and move from one side of the street to the other. And he said, what he's learned today or in that conference is that he will be different. He will be a better example. And what he would do is he would, instead of changing where he was or crossing the street, he would go to the pastor and he would greet them. He would greet them with warmness and kindness that he deserved, because he said he wants to be a better example. So I think as I'm listening here and we're wrapping up this call, each of us can do something differently from today. Each of us can do something, one or two things that will help us better understand people who are from a different faith tradition as us. That's the first thing. But I also think we can do something where we make the other peoples who are of other faiths feel welcomed by us, by our love, by our generosity, by our goodness. I think we each have an opportunity. We've heard today that there's pain in this area, that people are facing, that people are marginalized or being mistreated. I think we can, the people who are here on this call and those who will watch it later, can actually change that, each of us. For me, that's just a wonderful thing. So thank you so much, brothers and sisters. It's been so good to have you here. And thank you to you, Michael. Thank you, Mama Mualima. Thank you, Mel Lorato and Dr. Charmaine. It's been so good to have you here. And I look forward to meeting you more from you, because I think you have valuable insights that people need to hear. And please continue to share in your platforms and in your circles. Thank you, everybody. And next week we have another topic. It's posted online. Just look up that and join us again. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to those who joined online. Have a good night and have a good afternoon if you are in another part of the world. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
each and every
Thank
one of
you.
you, for joining us tonight. Take care.
Thank you, sis.
Thank you.
I learned
Bye-bye.
from all of you. Peace be upon you.
Thank you.